do now is to share with you my experience, okay? Because actually, I would like to encourage you to teach case because it's something that you will find it very rewarding. Because after you have done that, you will be appreciated more by your students, and you'll be happier with yourself. And not only so, it actually helps you become a better researcher too. Okay, because you will be able to understand the issues better than before. And also, if you do some consulting work for other people, you can actually do a better job because you know how to handle it. Okay? So, all right. This doesn't work either.
Sometimes the microphone, you have to talk into the
The
microphone.
remote is not. Yeah, this doesn't work. This remote is not working. This is what it doesn't. Okay, well, it's okay. You know what we can do?
是你要开始讲1-2秒钟，它声音才会出来。但
可
是
是我
如果没有的话
应该是不会。
，OK，
因为
那就
它没有声音。
是那我跟外面的 auditor 再讲一下。
There you go. Okay, so all right. So first of all, I'd like to share with you my most valuable experiences, meaning that the experience that I think would be most useful to you, of you to take in with you. Yeah, okay. Once, if you really want to be a case teacher, you need to be very committed to it. And it means that don't give up. Because during the break, some people ask me whether it would take a lot of time to be a case teacher. The answer is yes. Okay. For example, I have taught this case actually quite a few times, right? I still have to spend like 4 or 5 hours just to be prepared for this class. The reason being that every time I have to read it again, and I have to think about how I will teach today because you are a group of students who are different from the previous student I taught before, right? So I have to accommodate your backgrounds. I have to also think about what my objective today is. My objective is to sort of demonstrate how to teach a case, right? Not just to teach students, right, about entrepreneurship. Today I have 2 missions, right? One is to demonstrate how we teach. 2 is for you to see how we teach, right? 2 is for you to learn something from this case. So I have to think about it, right? In order to do that, spend probably 5 hours to prepare, right? So it does take a lot of time. But if it's a new case, you could easily spend probably like 18 or 20 hours just to be prepared, and which means that you really have to be committed to it. But once you have done that for a while, it's very rewarding because you learn so much. You learn so much by having to teach a case. And also, you'll be appreciated by your students. Some of you ask me, what if students don't pay attention to me, play sort of just play with their phone during the class? Then it never happened in my class. This is not possible. My student would not do that. If they do it, they know there'll be a big trouble. But the reason why they will never do that is really because they respect me. The reason why they respect me is really because they know that in order for me to teach like this, I have to spend a lot of time there. So that's kind of mutual trust you have to build between you and your students. When they
It's working.
Yeah. When they respect you, right? When they know that you have put all the effort you can to teach them, there's no reason why they don't repay okay you with the same result, right? Or that they will not do things that you don't want them to do. Okay, that's very important. It's a very good, it's a very important issue that we have to know. And so it takes a lot of time to prepare a case, right? So you need to be very committed to that. And of course, if you have spent enough time, then you are well prepared. Okay. What's important is that to gain confidence of your students while you are teaching a case, you want a student to have a feel that you know the case inside out very, very well. Okay, you know the case much better than the students. Which means that when you teach a case, it's better that you don't consult the case anymore. Everything should be in your brain. But sometimes you do, because a student will probably refer to a table or a figure in a case. Then you probably want to also look at it when he said or when she says that, right? Otherwise, everything should be in your brain. When I said that, it's not possible, to be honest, right? Because today you don't see, like in my field, almost in every case there's a financial statement, right? There are lots of numbers in the financial statement. It's not likely that you can memorize the financial statement, but you don't have to. But you do have to have a very good understanding how the information in the financial statement can be used for you to do the case discussion in class. Okay? If you have a very good grasp of that, then you'll be able to teach without having to consult the case very much during the class. So try not to consult the case as much as you can. Okay? Have everything in your brain, which actually would give students the impression that you know the case very, very well. Okay? And that would force them to be prepared too, right? Because they don't want to come to class while discussing with you, also reading the case, right? This is not going to work. So after a case, after you have taught a case, always review what you have done. For example, today when I go back today, I would really think about how I did today, right? What could I have done to make it better today? What are the responses of my student to my teaching today? I always do that. If I have to, I would probably revise my plan, teaching plan today. I'll talk about it later. I would do that today. And think about what I can learn from my teaching today. Okay, so that next time I can teach better, right? So always do that. And of course, it's always helpful to learn from other very good teachers. But please remember that you are not them. Okay, so what it really means that you need to be yourself. Okay, you can, of course, observe other teachers teaching, right? You can learn their techniques. You can learn from their experiences. But you are you. You cannot be them. Okay, so it's okay that you have your own style. And I also encourage you to sit in others' faculty members' classes if you know that they actually teach quite well. Okay, but of course before you go, you should let them know that you're coming, right? So at my school right now, we encourage, especially our young faculty members, to sit in our classes because we want them to know how we teach. Okay, it's very quite important. Okay, now, all right. So what I have tried to improve my case teaching. First of all, when you come, before you teach a class, you really have to know what your teaching objective is. Like in this case, I have two objectives, right? One is to give you a chance to see how we teach a case, right? And especially I want you to know how we manage. Well, I'm losing. Okay, how we manage a class, right? Because case teaching is more or less about managing a class. Because when you okay, and you don't want the case, although it's a discussion, a lot of people are talking, interacting with each other, but it has to be organized. Otherwise, you will lose control of the class, right? Once you lost control of the class, it's hard for you to deliver what you want to deliver, okay? So you need to manage the class. So today, what I need to do is to sort of give you a chance to see how we manage a class. Although, within that short period of time, we cannot share with you everything, but that will give you some idea as to how we do that, right? That's why I would like to apologize for saying to you that it's the 5th time you have broken your rule and so forth. But it's important, okay? Because that's how you could manage your class. Okay. So, and of course, your teaching objective will be related to whom you are going to teach, right? Like today, I know that I'm going to teach a group of my colleagues, right, who are also professors, right? So I know, you are professors, and my purpose today is to show how we teach a case, right? So I have to know that. I also know that you are diverse, right? Meaning that you have different backgrounds. Many of you don't know business, right? You will have your own special fields, but you don't know business. So how am I going to teach a group of students who don't really have business background today, right? So you have to know your students, right? You know their backgrounds. And then you also have to know what will be the length of your teaching today. Right? Today I know that I have 2-3 hours, right? So I'm going to have to allocate my time. Okay, and then also patron asked me to teach case and then do a short lecture, right? So I need to allocate my time to make sure that we have sufficient time to do this. And of course, teaching 3 hours will be very different from teaching a semester, right? These are things that we need to know. And then once you know your teaching objective, then you have to find a case that will fit your teaching objective. Okay, okay, that's very important. Okay, don't teach what you want to teach. Teach what the student have to learn. Well, that's important. Okay, and we tend to teach what we want to teach because we are more comfortable with that. But that's not education. Education is for kids to learn what they have to learn, not we want to teach them. Right? So you have to find a case based on your teaching objective. And then if it's a new case, you would always want to read the case before you pick it. It's always disastrous that after you have assigned a case to your students, and then before the class, while you're preparing, and you realize that, gee, this is a terrible case. Right? It's always bad. Okay? So make sure that you would read the case before assigning the case to students. It's important. And then if you are a new case teacher, I would suggest that you always pick a case that has a teaching note with it. Because teaching note is the case writer's teaching plan. In the teaching note, the case writer would let you know how he plans to teach the case. Okay? And it's very useful too. Because by knowing how the case writer will teach the case will give you some guidance as to how you can teach the case too. Although in most cases while you are teaching the case, the way you teach it will be different from what says in the teaching note. But teaching note is very, very useful. Okay, give you very important teaching points. Like for example, I'm writing a case which I think is very interesting now. Last night I was working with my co-author to finalize teaching note because I'm going to just give the note and give the case to the case center of my school, right? And they're going to promote the case. And it's a Chinese case. I'm not going to write it, I'm not going to translate it to English, but I'm going to promote the case. But yesterday we were working on a teaching note, right? We discussed several interesting teaching points. I think we had a very good discussion last night. We made some additions to the notes, which we think other instructors would appreciate that when they teach their case. So you need to read the teaching note too. Okay, and then and again, you need to prepare the case rigorously before teaching a case. Rigorous really means, in Chinese, really means 很严谨, which really means that you need to do the analysis. It's always terrible that you think students will do the analysis for you in the class. If you have that assumption, it's going to be disaster. Right? It's going to be disastrous. You have to do all the analysis before coming to the class, which means you must know much better than your students. Because you are the teacher they expect to learn from. Okay, how you do all the analysis. So for different fields have different ways of teaching, I guess. But in my field, we do have to make a few calculations sometimes, right? Like today, we perform some simple calculations, right? But before I can, actually, I have done all these numbers already, right? So I know how these numbers are calculated. If I have not done that, then it will be bad, right? Then we will not be able to continue to discuss the case. So you have to do more than your students. Don't expect your student to do for you. You have to do it for your students. All right. So what? Okay. And then sometimes what happens is that after we have taught a case several times, we have this feeling that we could just walk in a classroom and then teach it again without being prepared for it, which is a terrible assumption. Right? As I said yesterday, I still spent like 4 or 5 hours, right, preparing this case. Although I have taught this case many times, so even if it's a case that you've taught many times, you still want to be familiar with that before going to a class. Okay. Otherwise, it's going to be terrible. Okay. It's not going to be a good class. Okay. And then make sure that you have teaching points that that are based on some structural thought framework here. Like today, I do have some teaching points, right? First of all, my objective is for you to see how we teach, how we manage a class, right? But then I also would like you to learn something from this case, right? Basically, what we're talking about is an entrepreneur, right? So how do we understand this entrepreneur? Well, we try to understand how he does his business, right? How he make all these connections, right? And how he actually makes sure that everybody's risk is controlled, right? And how he allocates financial gains for everybody, right? So that's something that I would like you to know. And then after that, you'll be able to see that an entrepreneur has to do that, right? So in the day, I have to wrap up with a discussion on entrepreneurship, right? And we did that. Okay, so in order to do that, I have to structure the discussion today, right? And we, of course, in our field, we have a lot of studies on entrepreneurship, right? On risk management and so forth, right? So I have to have a thought framework that I could use for you to see how we understand or how we think about entrepreneurship, right? So that's what I did. Okay. So today, although many of you are not in the field of business, right? But I believe that all of you learn something from this case, although you are not, you do not have business background, right? But don't just go into a business after this, okay? All right? It's risky, right? All right, and then always prepare a board plan that rolls out your teaching points. Now, somebody asked me, have we, like Peggy said in the beginning of this session, that whether we have designed to have 5 boards and with different sizes just for this case. So that's not the case, okay? But what we do is this. Okay, let me show you this first, and I'll come back to this. Now, this is the classroom we teach, right? We use this classroom to teach a lot, okay? So you can tell that actually we have 6 boards, right? And there's one board here, another board over there, which is not shown in this picture. What happens is that if there are things that we would like students to know before coming to the class, we would actually write it on here. So as students come to the class, before the instructors here, students will see this, right? Usually it will be something related to, for example, what we want them to, what we want. For example, like in the last session, we talked about something quite interesting, right? And this case is related to that. We use that as a reminder for that. We use that as a reminder for that. But the board plan is this. Before I come to class, I have prepared a board plan that would actually help me think about what would be discussed in this class. Okay. So I would actually organize my teaching plan in the following way. I would try to ask questions, right? Okay. So for example, in the first board, on the first board, I would ask 2 questions. The second board, I would ask 1 question and so forth, right? And then after we have done the discussion, the board should be filled with the answers to the questions, right? And also sometimes I do need some tables and figures that would show students how we think about something and how we analyze something. And I also would also have thought about it. Like for example, we have this diagram here, right? This is something that I thought about it before coming to class. Right? I knew that it has to be somewhere. Usually, if it's in a classroom like that, this board likely will be here, right? Likely will be here, right? This one about the participants and their contractual relationship and so forth. This will be over here. Okay, this is over here, right? So we try not to erase anything during the class. Okay, and after the class, the 6th board should be filled, right? With result of discussion. And the students, of course, are allowed to take pictures afterwards if they want. And many of them actually do, because they want to go home to review what we have done in class. Okay, so you need a floor plan. Okay, that's important before coming to class. So you know what you want to talk about. Now, and make sure students know in advance that the key discussion issues you will cover in class. Basically, in many cases, although in some cases we don't do that, but usually we do, we will give students discussion questions before they come to class, and we would ask them to form discussion groups for them to discuss before coming to class. And also, depending on the level of students, if it's just graduate students or undergrad students, we would ask them to turn in a homework, which is answer of the discussion question, so that you're sure that they are well prepared. But for executive students, students who are business owners, high-level managers in a company, we normally don't do that because they are too busy to do it. Okay, we would just be happy that they read the case, right? So it depends. Okay, and then so students will be well prepared before coming to class, and then when they come, the sitting arrangement is always fixed, meaning that every student would have a name card, a name plates in front of them. Okay, so I would know their names, and every time they come to class, if it's a one semester class, they would always be seated in the same place. Okay, they don't change because I need that so that I can grade them. But I cannot ask them to change every time they come to class because it's hard for them to memorize what they say, right? So it has to be that case. Okay, so give them discussion questions. Okay, but of course, the question you give them is not the sequence. Okay, in which you're going to ask questions in the class, right? It's just something they need to know before coming to class. When you teach in the way you want to. Okay, but whatever you teach will be related to the information that they need to have before coming to class, right? All right, and then always be well prepared before going to class. And it's so important, right? First of all, know your students. Know your students, meaning that you want to know who they are, what their background is, and so forth, because that really helps you. Because you would know in advance what you have to do to be prepared for class. And also sometimes, because you usually have diverse student backgrounds, some of them actually could probably have backgrounds in the case you want to teach. You can use them to provide some interesting information to other students. Like for example, suppose I'm teaching a case about Apple computer, right? And I have a purchasing manager in my class who is responsible for the sourcing of all the Apple's components in Asia, for example. We did have a student like that, he graduated, right? And then if this case about Apple, then we'll ask him to talk about Apple for maybe 1 or 2 minutes, right? Other students will feel very interesting, right? Because he's in the company, he knows the company, he can share valuable information. So know your students is very, very, very important. I'm not good at memorizing my students' name, but if you know them well, if you can discuss with them as to, you can talk to them about their backgrounds, and while you're chatting with them, they have the sense that you know them well. It always helps, okay, your relationship with the students. And what's important is that less is more. Young teachers tend to want to teach a lot because they think they know a lot, so they want students to learn everything from them, which is always a bad strategy because you only have a limited amount of time. So make sure that you know what your key points, teaching points are, and just deliver those points. right? So today, all I want to do is to use this case for you to understand entrepreneurship, right? So I want you to see how Reese organizes everybody, right? How he manages risk, and that's it, right? Of course, we can talk about a lot more than what we discussed today, but we wouldn't have so much time, right? So less is more. Don't try to do too much. It's because if you want to do much, you lose control of the class. You get nervous, and then it's gonna be a bad class. Okay, so you want to do that. Now, because this is a case discussion, right? So prepare some questions that would invite debates. Okay, that always work better in a case where students tend to be familiar with the case before they come to class, right? And so if students are quite familiar with the case, then they know the information in the case, then they'll be able to engage, discuss the discussions with information in the case, right? So actually they can debate. For example, you can ask some students, like in this case, hey, do you think risk, profits it's good, right? Some students might say yes, some students might say no, right? So you can actually allow them to debate a little bit, right? And that would help students understand, how we see whether a deal is fair or not, right? Remember we talked about a fair deal, right, which is very important. And then there's a difference between teaching a case and teaching a class here. We want you to teach a class, we want to teach a case, not just to teach a class. Okay? What does that mean is really this. In many cases, instructors talk too much. They try to give students the information in the case, right? So they are like repeating their case to the students. It's not case discussion. A case discussion is for the students to talk, for them to figure out what's the critical thing in the case, for them to organize the thoughts, right? And that's provided in the case and provided, by the participation of other students. And for them to learn, rather than for you to tell them. Are you with me? So in a case, teach a case, make sure that students talk more than you do. Like, should be pretty much like 70% talked by the students, 30% by you. You are the moderator of a discussion, right? You are the one who organizes the thoughts for them. You are the guy who makes sure that they learn something after this case discussion. But you are not the person who tells them what's in the case. Right? But sometimes we do have students who are not familiar with the case. So in that case, you have to be skillful in providing information whenever you have to. Otherwise, the case discussion will drag too long. Like today is an example, right? Because I know you guys are not going to be prepared when you come, right? So I know that I would have to give you some information during the discussion. If I don't do that, it means that, 100 minutes wouldn't be enough for me to finish what I want to do, right? Okay. Always start and finish the class on time. Always come to class a few minutes before, even 10 minutes. Okay, and always finish on time. Students really would appreciate that. You always want to be in the class before your students come. Okay, and always finish on time. All right, your student will respect you for that. Don't be late. Don't just sometimes tell a student you are not going to show up. It's always not good. Once you lose your students' respect, it's not possible for you to manage them, right? Because if you cannot manage them, it's always going to be a bad class, right? So you have to earn your students' respect by what? By being well prepared, by being punctual, right? By being enthusiastic. Make sure that they see your energy while you are doing that. Make sure they believe that you are very enthusiastic about sharing this information, the knowledge with them. And make sure that they believe that you really care about whether they learn or not. Once you do that, no matter how tough you are, they respect you. Okay, that's very important. You want them to respect you. Okay, don't pamper your students. Okay, no need to do that. Right? So I never take my students out for dinner. Right? Seriously, I never give them anything. The only thing I want them to do is work very hard. Okay, and they know that, right? Now, so have a good rapport with the student right from the start. So if it's a semester class, what's the most important class is the first class. But the first class is the occasion that you use to communicate to your student that you are a fair teacher, you are an enthusiastic teacher, and you are going to be well prepared, and you expect them to be well prepared before coming to class. That first class is so important because the class is the occasion that you use to build the confidence of your students in you, which is tremendously important. If you don't have good command, if you don't have a good control of that in the first class, it's hard for you to be successful throughout the semester. Once they have confidence in you, it's difficult for them to what? To change that impression. Unless you screwed up, right? You have a discussion later on, right? Otherwise, they're gonna face it. Now, this is hard, right? Be confident. Make sure that believe the student can learn something very valuable from you. A new case teacher tend not to be very confident because sometimes we forget things in the case, you know. Sometimes students would ask questions that I'm not prepared, right? I don't know how to do that. Right? It's okay, don't worry about it because you are the teacher, you know much better than the students. It's always the case. Alright, so you have to have that confidence. But once you are confident, then you talk differently, right? You will talk with confidence. A student will feel that you are confident. Okay, and that's important. Right? Of course, don't pretend that you know something you don't, which is always bad. Right? If it's something that you don't really know, fine, right? Let a student know that next time you have answer for them and so forth, right? Something like this. Okay. And always, of course, if you don't know the answer, somebody might know, right? So to ask the student to answer the question, you know. So it might work. All right. It's always important to give students feedback on how they have done. This is hard because we are all very busy, right? So that's why I said that after every class you have to evaluate students' performance today. Give them grades, right, based on their participation today, right? Usually we would evaluate our students based on the frequency of their participation, the quality of their participation. Now, quality is always more important than frequency. Because sometimes students just want to earn some credit, right? So just raise hand and they don't know what they're talking about, you know? You don't want to encourage them. You want them to understand that, gee, you know, what's important is that for you to say something that other people can learn from you. That other students can learn, not just try to say something. But you have to let students how they have done, right? So for example, 2 or 3 classes into the semester, you should give students a feedback, right? How have they done? They would know, gee, you know, I have not talked. I have talked, but the professor thinks what I said sucks, right? So like they have to know, right? They have to know so that they would improve, right? They would work harder before coming to class, right? Now, if you are a new case teacher, begin with teaching cases in your expert field. It's important. If you are a new case, don't teach a case that you are not, which is in a field that you are not familiar with, right? For example, like I teach entrepreneurship and finance, right? When I first teach cases, I will teach cases in my field. Maybe you are in, for example, we have a professor here who is from a nursing school, right? You want to teach a case that's in your field, which is important. And do not be afraid to challenge yourself by teaching new cases on familiar subjects. Now, once you have taught a while, right, then you should start branching out. Don't just teach the case you have taught many times. Try to teach new cases as often as possible. Because new cases tend to, I'll let you have a chance to ask questions after I'm done. Okay, And so you should encourage yourself to teach new cases. Right? But of course, you know, you always want to branch out from the field you're familiar with to the field you're less familiar with. In our case, because we are talking about business, right? In my field, business is complicated, right? Just in this example, right? We talk about right? We talk about brand, right? We talk about money, right? We talk about factory business. We talk about manufacturing. We talk about just in time, right? We talk about promotion, right? We talk about channel, right? So it's very complicated, right? So in order for you to be a good business teacher, you cannot just say, I'm a finance teacher, I only teach financial statement, which is not going to work, right? You have to teach like a person who understands business, right? So sometimes you do have to teach cases that will cover other fields, but make sure that you learn that fields, right, before you teach. Otherwise, it's not going to be good. Okay, after you have taught cases for a while, start to write some cases and teaching notes. Now, don't just write cases right now. Okay, it will be a waste of your time. Okay, you don't want to write cases before you are experienced case teacher. Try to teach for a while, at least 1 or 2 years, before writing a case. Trust me, it's always better that way, because then you would know how to write a case. Of course, it would be always nice to maybe to chat with other experienced case writers about how they write a case. The Harvard Business School has a note on how to write a case. They also have notes on how to teach a case, right? You can consult that. By the way, you can always visit the website of Harvard Business School. You can be registered as a faculty member who can have free access to the website. Okay, you don't have to pay. All right, and I'm sure that because I'm in the business field, so I am not sure if there are other websites you can do similar things, but maybe they are. Okay, and you can have the content free, right? You don't have to pay for it. All right, so but after a while, after you have taught cases for a while, you are encouraged to write cases, and also when you write a case, make sure that you also write teaching note, because that helps you think about what kind of information you need to have in the case. Think about how you would teach the case. Okay. All right, so that's pretty much I want to say about my experience. Okay, and because we only have this amount of time, so I can't say more than this. But I think we have probably like 6 or 7 minutes for discussion. So if you would like to, I'll be happy to entertain some questions. Yes, please.
I'm curious, have you ever teach this case or other cases to the foreigner? I mean, to the...
For instance, I do that all the time.
All the time?
All the time, because in our school right now, due to the effort of Professor Che, we have many international students, and so we have to teach classes in English. I teach every class in English, except to my executive students. Except to EMBA students, because we have to teach them Chinese.
So both undergraduate and graduate students?
Yes, both undergrad and grad students we teach English. A lot of us do.
Taiwan students, both Taiwanese?
Yeah, they are mixed. Yeah, they are in the same class. Yes, but I don't teach many cases in the undergrad program because undergrad students they still need to have enough theoretical background. So because I teach them, for example, I teach investment to a group of undergrad students. They are either likely they're just sophomore, junior, first time to learn investment. So I have to teach them theory. If they're seniors, then I will probably teach some cases. But I always teach cases to my graduate students. I never give lecture. I give lectures sometimes, like today, right? I will teach the case. I'll give some lecture, but the main teaching method is the case. And of course, when we teach case, sometimes we would use other media to videos, right? Or other things that just to make the teaching more vivid, more interesting to students. Yeah. But today I don't have to. Yeah. But if you want to, you can go visit the Harvard Business School. They are experienced, good teachers who actually will talk about how they teach a case. Right? And these short videos, like sometimes only like 10 to 20 minutes. It's quite interesting to watch that. It's not difficult at all.
English is even happened before we were born. The reason I ask is actually, I do believe the purpose of having this study is to link what we learn to the real life, make the teaching
No, not at all. I mean, like I write cases, right? I just finished a case last night, for example. Right? I'm going to give it to my school to promote a case. It's a case that just happened recently, right? In the past few years. Of course, there are always good cases, but the criteria for choosing a case are, first of all, whether it fits what you teach or not, whether it's a well-written case or not, and then your teaching objective. Right? Like this case, although it's so old, it's a case that we use a lot because it demonstrates entrepreneurship quite well. Right? And then board game, although actually appeared before you were born, but we still played it, right? So it's not like it's something that you cannot really relate to. You know what I'm saying? Today we still do that. Right? I mean, on our there are still some TV programs who invite guests, and then whether they can get points is if they can answer questions. Right? So these are like that. Okay? So there are many cases at Harvard that are classic cases. Although they are very old, we still teach them. But you are right. In many cases, more often than not, we try to use more recent cases because we want students to learn more recent business experiences. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Up to related questions. As I mentioned, we can give students questions in the way. Can you give some example of what kind of question we ask based on this case? And second is, will a teacher teaching the case will give the objective of this course to the students in advance?
Okay, now we usually don't tell students our teaching objective in advance because teaching objective is something that you need to know. Students don't have to know. Okay, but you do want to give them. Okay, let's put it this way. You would give them questions. This question would prepare them to come to class, and then during the class you discuss the case, right? Based on the objective you have today for them, right? And then in the end of the class, you will conclude by sort of reiterating your main teaching points to students so that they understand what they have learned today. We usually do that, okay? It's not that you cannot give them your teaching objective, but it's probably not that useful, right? What is more useful are the questions. For example, today, a few questions could be, do you think Reese is an entrepreneur? Right? Do you think it's fair that Reese, how much you ask, how much everybody makes? It's like a question, they have to figure it out, right? Do you think it's fair? You can ask questions like that, right? Who bears the highest risk in this case? We're going to ask them. A student would think about all these issues before they come to class, right? But when you discuss the case, you don't have to follow that sequence, right? You also, and then it's always not possible that you can follow your whole plan, right? Because student would talk about things that you could not anticipate beforehand, right? So they would talk about things that, like olive blue and gee, I never thought about this, right? And then you have to try to manage that. Yes.
How do you give feedback to the students when you have more than 60, 70 students?
Okay, what we do is this. We have a seating chart. Right? For example, the classroom that I just showed you, right? I have seating chart, right? Every student would be seated in the same place throughout the semester. And then I would have a seating chart with their name on it, okay, with their names on it. And then every time after I have taught, based on the seating chart, I will recall how they did during the class, and I will comment on their performance. Usually it's a mark. Like for example, I will mark whether they have participated or not, right? I will mark whether they are absent today or not. If they show up, I'll mark whether they are late or not. My student cannot be late. Okay, I'm not late, so they cannot be late, right? And I will mark how well they do during the discussion, for different levels. So I have right now about 4 levels of their discussion quality.
Also, how even they against the classroom.
Well, that would be taking into account when I give their performance today, of course, right? But I usually don't mark them off. Don't mark. I usually don't take up their points just because they talk without raising hand. Right? But I would remind them not to do that. And after 2 or 3 classes, students know that. The first or 2 is difficult because they're not used to it, right? But then afterwards, they know that, gee, they have to raise hands before they talk. Okay, so yeah.
I'm curious about how many cases you use within a semester.
Okay, I usually, because Taiwan semester is too long, right? 18 weeks is really too long, okay? But because we have 18 weeks, I usually teach about 14 to 15 cases. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a lot. Yes. And then but I teach because it depends. For my graduate student, because they are not very experienced, I would use about 150 minutes to teach a case usually.
For one the duration of the
3 hours, right?
3 hours.
150 minutes to teach a case. But for our experienced students who are executives, for example, I will probably teach 90 or 100 minutes for a case. Yes. Yes.
Language teacher and tutor must be done. So I found it quite difficult to get a voice and opinion. So any tips to encourage them to speak out?
Okay, it's a good question.
Girl here talk a lot.
That's exactly what I want to say. In my experience, girls in my class, they want to talk a lot too. Right, because it probably has more to do with the culture than their gender, you know. I mean, they don't talk not because they are girls, because culture-wise, we just don't have that kind of participating culture, right? So we don't want to talk, right? But once a student knows that if they don't talk, they're going to be failed, right? Once students know that if they talk, they can learn from other students can learn from them, and once they know that if they talk, nobody's going to laugh at them, right? And once they know that if they talk, they can learn a lot by talking too, then they will start talking. And then if they don't talk, you ask them to talk. I seldom have a student in class, when I ask her a question, he would say, Professor Chow, I don't want to talk. Or I say, she has to talk, right? And she has to say something, right? And then you would try to, but don't intimidate the students. Okay, encourage them, right? And you don't want them to be afraid of you, right? You want them to have confidence. When I say my students are afraid of me, I'm like joking, but they're indeed very afraid of me, of course, because they know I will really fail them if they don't do it. Okay, and I have the right to do that. And they have to be on time, they cannot be late. Even my executive students who are 50s or 50s business owners, they have to be on time. I don't allow them to use phones, notebooks, tablets, anything like that. And they cannot just walk out the room to answer a telephone call, which is absolutely normal. There are rules that I'm insistent. But I must say that in most cases, they respect me because I do those things, which is very important. It's probably the most valuable experience I think I can share with you. Yeah. I may not teach well, but they know I am well prepared, right? That's very important. Yes.
But if they did what you do,
I just I'll fail them.
fail the whole course.
No, it's not possible. How could have a whole class that don't show up on time? No, you don't. Right? There are students who show up on time, students who don't show up on time. And then in the first 2 classes, they don't know, right? They're used to not to come class on time. And then after 3 or 4 classes, they know that you actually mark them for not showing. And then after 2 or 3 classes, you give them feedback, right? You say, hey, you have been absent, or you have not been on time, right? if I see you like that, don't come to class again. What do you think they'll do? They'll come on time next time. Right? But before you do that, make sure they have confidence in you. Right? In the first class, remember? Make sure that they believe that you are so well prepared, that you love them, you want them to learn, you're going to work harder than they do. There's no reason why they don't follow your rules. Just no reason. Okay? Because students are reasonable, trust me. Right? Yes.
Because of the time, we can take maybe 1 or 2.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about time. Yeah.
Through our education system, most of students are shy in class.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you create that atmosphere?
In the first 2 classes, it's really hard, for example. But then if you just ask questions, you would say, hey, Hui Ru, right? I'm treating like a student. I say, hey, Hui Ru, what do you think about this? The first, second time, she would really feel uncomfortable because right? It's not often that they will be asked by instructors to talk, right? But after a couple of times, they feel comfortable. And then after they talk, you need to encourage them. Never say, what a stupid comment, you cannot do that. You always want to encourage them. And then even if what they say is not it's not correct, you want to find a way to let her know that a better answer will be like that. But in most cases, discussions, there are really no correct answers, I must say that. Even today, when we talk about whether they have a fair deal or not, there's no correct answer to it, right? You can have all different theories about fairness. Fairness is a very philosophical issue, right? So my point today is not to talk about fairness in depth. My point is for you to see that it's important for people to feel fair, right, in a contractual arrangement like that. Otherwise, you cannot continue to have good business. Right? We don't have time to discuss it, remember? We said that I always treat my manufacturer very well. I always treat my sales representative very well. Why? Because he wants to make sure that in the future, he can still what? Work with them. Right? Yeah. So that's the point. We don't have time to do it today because, we simply don't. And one reason, forgive me for joking about this, one reason is that you have not read the case very well before coming to class, right? So you don't want your student to do that. You want a student what? To be well prepared before coming to class, so that you can make the class discussion very rich. Right? Otherwise, you simply don't have enough time, right? Okay?
One last question?
Yeah.
You mentioned that you need to teach what students want to learn. How do you assess that?
Okay, well, that's a very good question. It's always a very important question. You should start with the program you are with, right? Like for example, I'm in finance department, right? So we do have the education objective of my departments, right? And then we do have a class design as to which class has to teach what. Now, when we design the class, we do know that what the students have to learn. But sometimes what we have observed is this. Professors today still are more comfortable teaching what they want to teach because it's easier, less risk, and also saving time, right? But it's not good. We need to change this kind of teaching culture. We need to make sure that we want to teach what students need to learn. We know. It's just that we don't want to do that. Why? Because it takes a lot of time for us to change. We don't want to do that, right? Okay, final note before we leave. It's always very time-consuming to teach case. So when you go back to your institution, you have to discuss that with your administrators in school. Let them know that if they are serious about having case discussions in their curriculum, they must give you a reasonable teaching load. Okay? How can you prepare a case for 20 hours and then teaching 5 classes in a semester, in a week? It is not possible. All right? It's something that you need to work out. I can't help you with that. All right? Okay? Something that you need to know. But even if you have heavy teaching load, I still would encourage you to teach some cases. Even 1 or 2 per semester would be just nice. Okay? And gradually you'll teach more. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and I hope you have a chance to see our university. If you have not, then you can come in the future, all right? Thank you.